Hello everyone, I'm AliasV. It is week 3 of the MPL Spark split, joined by the always awesome Paul Cheon, and we're going to be taking a look at some of the fanciest lists we saw from players this week. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great, and let me say, this week, the players really kind of stepped outside the box and brought a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
fancy, awesome decks to this week of the Spark Split.
Oh, I am very excited this week. We have seen so much spice, so much variety, and the one that I like the most, Paul, and I'm sure maybe you like it the most too, but you know, maybe you're not allowed to have favorites, is the Dreadhorde deck. 4-color Dreadhorde. Kill everything, bring it all back. Oh, it's just so much fun to play. I love this deck. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, so this is kind of the evolution of, I think, the Sultai mid-range deck that a lot of people were playing, kind of coming into War of the Sparks standard. But now there's a new top-end threat in town here with Commander Dreadhorde instead of something like a Hydra Crisis that you've seen.
Definitely. So the idea of this deck, just from playing it today, we've thrown in a whole bunch of Golgari Explorers, so you're digging through your deck, you're finding all your answers, you're getting a whole bunch of life, and then the thing that I love the most about this deck specifically is its inclusion of 2 Massacre Girls. Now, if you want to go digging in your graveyard, you're going to need some things in your graveyard, and what better way to put them there than Massacre Girl? She kills absolutely everything if you get your timing and your toughness is right, and then, you know, followed up next turn with Commander Dreadhorde, just bring it all back. So all of your Wild Growth Walkers gaining you a whole bunch more life because you're going to bring back your Jade Light Rangers and your Merfolk Branch Walkers. It's an infinite value engine. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, this deck has been really impressive, and the one thing that really just allows this deck to go over the top is the fact that it has this 2-card combo that I want to talk about.
Oh yeah.
Where you go Command the Dreadhorde after you fill up your graveyard with a bunch of those Explorer creatures and Wild Growth Walker. That allows you to basically pay as much life as you possibly can to bring everything back, and then you gain all that life back with the Wild Growth Walker. Now, if you get Tamiyo, Collector of Tales, into your graveyard as well, if you bring back Tamiyo, you can use Tamiyo's -3 effect to get back Command the Dreadhorde. Even if your opponent has a sweeper, a wrath of any kind, you just cast Command the Dreadhorde again next turn with an even bigger graveyard.
Oh, it's wonderful. And the one deck that this specific list is really good against as well is the Golgari deck, which we've seen, because you can just go and nick your opponent's Wild Growth Walkers and just gain double the life off of your creatures. It's so cool. I love it.
Yeah, the fact that this deck just allows you to go wide over and over again. Sure, you play Command the Dreadhorde, your Golgari opponent plays a Finality to sweep the board. Doesn't matter, I'll just do it again next turn. So this is truly the absolute best way to kind of go over the top of all the mid-range decks. And this is kind of a reason why you've also seen a lot of people move from Bant mid-range to Command the Dreadhorde mid-range, because this deck kind of goes over the top of those strategies.
Yeah. Another inclusion is, of course, Vraska Golgari Queen, which, you know, as we know, if you +2, you can sacrifice a permanent, gain a life, draw a card, so that's just another way to help fill the graveyard. Just recur as much goodness from the graveyard as you can. It's just such a fun list to play. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vraska Golgari Queen, too, has also been a Planeswalker that has kind of risen in value recently because of the Jeskai Super Friends deck, the Jeskai Planeswalker deck, where now you have a 4-mana permanent that allows you to actually kill a lot of those powerful 3-mana Planeswalkers that people have been playing. Teferi, Saheeli, all those cards are now, you know, a permanent that you can remove with your 4-mana threat.
Yeah, let's take a look at the sideboard here. Any surprises here? We got Duress, so for the control matchup. We got Cast Downs for any creature-heavy matchup, as well as Moment of Craving. Elder Spell for said Jeskai Planeswalkers decks, because we have seen certainly a lot of Planeswalkers in this set.
Yeah.
Crawl Harpooner for any pesky flyers. Narset, this would be for the Is It Phoenix deck, potentially, as well as just, you know, shutting down control opponents who want to go and get as much card advantage as they can. Thrashing Bronzodon. Thrashing Bronzodon is actually a really cool inclusion too, especially against like Wilderness Reclamation. Drop it on the board and just kill it as soon as you can. And then Liliana Dreadhorde General, just for, you know, that extra little bit of value. And kill more creatures. Haha, get it out of your graveyard.
Yeah, definitely. And the one card that I really want to highlight out of the sideboard is the Elder Spell.
Oh yeah.
Now, this is a card that we kind of created in case, you know, Planeswalker shenanigans just got out of hand in Standard. And we're like, all right, we're making a lot of Planeswalkers in this set. What happens if there's just way too many Planeswalkers in all the decks? Well, you have the Elder Spell. And so a lot of people have been going to Elder Spell as an option to, you know, combat these like decks that play 5, 6, 7 Planeswalkers in their deck. With 1 card for 2 mana, you can remove all their Planeswalkers And if you have your own Planeswalker, something like a Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, boom, all of a sudden you get to emblem the Teferi and just win the game in very short order.
Cool, so that is the 4-color Commander Dreadhorde deck. You're going to be seeing this a few times on ladder, I imagine, just because of how fun this deck is and how much power it can generate. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for this one. Let's take a look now at Glogowski's Nexus of Fate deck. Now, one thing you will notice about this deck, Paul, where is Wilderness Reclamation?
I have no idea. I kind of expect, I kind of, at the beginning of each week, I go through all the MPL lists to kind of help with the archetype breakdowns. And I was like, I see Nexus of Fate. Where is the, no Wilderness Reclamation anywhere. And that was really, really surprising to me. But then, you know what? I thought about it a little bit and it kind of made sense. The reason being, Teferi, Time Raveler, is all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Blue and white, you're going to play 3 or 4 copies of Teferi, Time Raveler, and Wilderness Reclamation just gets completely shut off by that card.
That's
so
true.
I think Golgowski was like, you know what? I still want to play Nexus, but I don't want to lose to Teferi, so I'm going to try this slightly different take on Simic Nexus.
Yeah. Now, what this deck usually wants to do is ramp up as quick as it can to its biggest threats being, in this deck, I believe, Nissa Who Shakes the World, because what she does, her passive ability, whenever you tap a forest for mana, add additional green mana. So if you think about it, you're dumping a whole bunch of forests on the board. You can tap for an insane amount of mana and then get your big angry jellyfish down. This deck basically becomes Nexus Stompy, if I can call it that, but it's a really interesting take on it, and I'm curious to see how well this will perform for him this weekend. So
this is a really interesting deck. Golgowski actually has even more ramp than the typical Simic Nexus deck, right? Because it doesn't play any of the spells. It actually just plays mana creatures. It plays the Llanowar Elves and the Incubation Druids along with the Growth Spirals to really try to turbo out Tamiyo and Nissa. Because once you get Nissa into play, the moment you untap, you now have a world of mana, right? Now you can actually just start hard casting those Nexus of Fates if you draw them, or also just play a gigantic Hydra Crisis to also try to win the game. So this is kind of more of a, I want to say, tap out Nexus of Fate, where you're just ramping and just trying to play really, really, high impact, heavy hitting cards, but then ultimately also have that end game of Nexus of Fate, which allows you to just kind of, seal the deal with the late game because you can draw so many cards with the Hydra Crisis.
Yeah, I mean, the more turns you get as well, Nissa gets to her ultimate a lot quicker, and then you just have a whole army of trees at your disposal and just...
And this is one of the best Planeswalkers at killing other Planeswalkers, right? Because she has the ability to just make an instant, hasty 3/3 to start putting a lot of pressure on the Planeswalkers that your opponents can play. So yeah, really curious to see, because the 5-mana green Planeswalker of choice kind of before War of the Spark was Vivian. But I've seen a lot of people kind of make the transition and choose to play Nissa instead.
Yeah, the extra body, just being able to get that 3 points of damage in, and the threat of an indestructible forest flying at you, it kind of makes this deck a lot of fun to play. Take a look at the sideboard here. We've got the Arboreal Grazer. Now, this would be brought in against the more aggressive matches, because the Llanowar Elf technically dies to shock straight away. This little guy doesn't. We got the negates as well for the control matchups. Thorn Lieutenant, that creates an extra body if it's targeted, and it's just a good mana sink. We have a whole bunch of mana to play with in this deck, so yeah, you want a +4/+4 Thorn Lieutenant? There you go, easy peasy. Thrashing Brontodon, pretty good against the enchantment-heavy decks, such as the Wilderness Reclamation or Legion's Landing, and then the Biogenic Ooze, just for a little bit extra spice in there. Anything surprising in the sideboard, Paul?
Yeah, so if you take a look at the sideboard, I think he just has the option here to fully transform and just take out Nexus of Fate if he actually wants to.
Yeah.
What he can choose to do is just bring in all those big green creatures, the Grazer, Lieutenant, Brontodon, and Biogenic Ooze, and just kind of turn it into like a Simic Stompy deck like you alluded to, where that's kind of the game plan that you want against the creature matchups. Now, if you want to have game against the control matchups, then you can just bring in the negate and play this Nexus of Fate game against those decks instead. So, kind of 2 ways to play it. Arboreal Grazer is actually the card that's kind of risen in value in stock. It's a little bit surprising to me. I mean, people aren't playing Carl Harpooner anymore because Grazer just does a decent job of blocking all those flyers. This deck really wants to ramp out. And honestly, 3 toughness oftentimes is all you need when you're playing against the 2 aggressive decks in the format, which are kind of the mono white or Azorius aggro decks and mono red decks.
Definitely. So that is Glogowski's Nexus list. Let's see if the exclusion of Wilderness Reclamation comes back to haunt him or not. Last but not least, we're taking a look at Yasuoka's Golgari list. Now, you'll notice that all 3 of the Japanese players this week are playing this list, a variation thereof. There's a whole bunch of exploding going on here. Just take a look at this. Assassin's Trophy, we've got Casualties of War, we've got Field of Ruin, we have Ravenous Chupacabra that wants to just destroy things, we've got Massacre Girl. Paul, what is going on in this list?
Well, I mean, a lot. There's a lot to unpack here. But I think, like you alluded to, the thing that I first want to talk about here is kind of the Assassin's Trophy Casualties of War Field of Ruin package. And what I like to call this is kind of standard land destruction package, honestly. What we saw from that 4-color Commander Dreadhorde earlier was the fact that it really pushed mana to the limits. And when you push mana to the limits, guess what you have trouble putting into your deck? Basic lands. The 4-color Commander Dreadhorde deck plays 0 basics. And some of the Jeskai Walker's lists that I've seen in the past also play 1 or 2 basics. So when you play Assassin's Trophy and you know your opponent doesn't have any basic lands, boom, turn 2, kill a land. On top of that, because you're straight 2 colors, you could now afford to play a card like Field of Ruin, which also is a way to destroy lands. On turn 3, if you have a Field of Ruin against a 4-color Commander Dreadhorde deck, it fixes your mana and just straight up kills their land, and they can't do anything about it. And then, of course, the biggest LD spell of them all, we have Casualties of War, which, I mean, potentially can kill 5 permanents. I mean, I don't think I've ever done that. I mean, what's your record with this card?
I think I got 4. I killed a Wilderness Reclamation, I killed a Teferi, I killed a creature, and then I blew up one of their lands, and specifically their blue land, because I know that controls all the nope in Magic, so I made sure to kill that one.
Yeah, and this is fascinating to see, because honestly, I didn't expect Casualties of War to be a 3-of in the main of a standard deck, but
me neither.
Here we are. This is the metagame that we're in, where everybody's greedy mana based. Everybody has a bunch of planeswalkers. Almost every single deck has a planeswalker in their deck. So oftentimes, Casualties of War is just going to get you 3 permanents. So really, really interesting deck here. Really, really innovative, and I just can't believe they just kind of went all in here on the land destruction package.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about even the aggro decks, the White Weenie, they're playing Enchantments and History of Analia, they're playing Legion's Landing, they've got Gideon as a Planeswalker, the Mono Red also now has Chandra, they've got Experimental Frenzy, so you're gonna have good targets all around. So I think including this is very, very clever indeed. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing things blow up personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And also this deck just has kind of that core package that all the black-green mid-range base decks have. They have the Wild Growth Walker plus Merfolk Branchwalker and Jadelight Ranger. If you're playing green, don't leave home without it. This is the package that you want against the aggressive decks in the format, right? You know, the mono red and mono white decks in the format. If you resolve a Wild Growth Walker and are able to then follow that up with the Jadelight Ranger, I mean, I've scooped up a lot of games when my opponents have done that when I'm playing an aggressive deck.
You're pretty golden when that happens. And one card I haven't seen in a very long time is Ravenous Chupacabra. He's made a reappearance.
Yeah, for
puppy.
Sure. Looks a little scary, but I think, Ravenous Chupacabra has actually seen a resurgence in play, not only in Golgari, but I've also seen people play it in Sultai decks as well. Yeah. The reason being is less people are playing this deck. Less people are playing Sultai midrange. When Sultai midrange was all over the place, people played Hostage Taker instead, because Hostage Taker was really, really good at stealing opposing Hydroid Krasis. Yeah. However, since people aren't playing that anymore, people would much rather just have a creature that just straight up enters the battlefield and removes a permanent that you want.
Oh, yeah. Now, I imagine we'll see this matchup possibly this weekend, where we're going to see the Golgari versus the 4-color Commander Dreadhorde. Who wins in that fight? There's a whole bunch of big dudes just batting heads here. Who wins in that fight, do you think, Paul?
So what this deck needs to do to win that matchup, because Commander Dreadhorde is kind of if you resolve Commander Dreadhorde, it is the ultimate mirror breaker, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it allows you to return all the permanents back onto the battlefield, and you just kind of have that inevitability. However, this deck can try to make it so your opponents just can't cast Commander Dreadhorde, right?
Yep.
You have the 4 copies of Assassin's Trophy with Field of Ruin and Casualties of War. Your main game plan here is to get them off mana so they can't play Commander Dreadhorde and just kill them with cards like Carnage Tyrant or a big Wild Growth Walker. And that's another thing, by the way, that I want to talk about.
Oh, yeah?
3 copies of Carnage Tyrant.
I know, right?
six drops in this deck, which is absurd. And I think, yeah, look at this mana curve, right? and part of the reason why you want to play all those Carnage Tyrants is because we're in a world where there's a ton of Planeswalkers. Those Planeswalkers have a really tough time stopping a Carnage Tyrant.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, traditionally those Planeswalker decks have used cards like Dovin to stop a creature. Well, can't Dovin a hexproof creature, right?
No
can't
touchy.
Exactly. And can't chump block with a Sahili token.
No.
So Carnage Tyrant, I mean, I think the Japanese pros who brought this deck to the tournament really expected lots and lots of Planeswalkers. And you can see that even in the removal that they chose to play, with the 4 copies of Trophy, with the Bresket and Casualties of War, along with the 3 copies of Carnage Tyrant, this deck is truly ready for that Jeskai Planeswalkers deck that we saw last week.
It's like, oh, you have flying Planeswalkers? Well, I have an implacable Death Lizard. Maha. Let's take a look at the sideboard here. We've got Duress again for the control matchups. Let's get rid of any threats in hand. Cast down for creatures, Moment of Craving for creatures, the Elder Spell. Not mainboard, but sideboard, just in case we encounter any flying Planeswalkers. Nexus's Cruelty, this is an interesting addition to the sideboard. Threshing Brontodon, again for enchantments. Crucible of Worlds, because Field of Ruin might be necessary later. And then Nissa, who shakes the world, just to be a little extra, tree power. Anything of interest here, Paul?
Yeah, that Crucible of Worlds.
Yeah.
They're playing exactly one because the only land that they can actually get back is the Field of Ruin. But I think their plan is to, hey, let's put a little something spicy in our sideboard. So in case we do draw the combo of Crucible into Field of Ruin, you can basically lock out the game when you play against the 4-color Commander Dreadhorde decks, or even the Jeskai Planeswalkers decks that play very, very few basics.
That's so rude. I like it. I really hope we get to see Crucible Worlds do something cool this week, but yeah, I guess that remains to be seen.
Yeah, Golgari Land Destruction. Apparently that's the new archetype. That's the new thing to do. But you know what? Honestly, I really like the adjustments that they made. And this, you know what people are probably going to have to do next week?
Yeah.
Play some basic lands.
Yeah.
Might need to play some basic lands.
I imagine that will be the case. Well, thank you so much, Paul. There you go, friends. Those are some of the most interesting deck lists from the MPL Spark Split Week 3.